They said the carnival closed years ago, but every night, when the fog rolls in, the music starts again. The rides move on their own. The lights flicker in patterns that seem to breathe. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the laughter of people who never left. When journalist Claire Harlow breaks in to uncover its secret, she finds more than a ghost story. She finds an audience waiting for one last show, and she's already part of it. The letter arrived on a damp Tuesday morning, slipping through the mail slot like a whisper from a past best left forgotten. Evelyn Gray had been sorting through the mundane clutter of her apartment when the cream-colored envelope caught her eye, its edges frayed, the paper thick and textured, as if it had weathered the passage of decades. No return address was present, only her name, scrawled in an elegant, looping script that sent a shiver crawling up her spine. She hesitated before breaking the seal, the air in the room suddenly heavy, as if time itself had paused to watch. Inside was a single sheet, yellowed with age, the ink faded but legible. The words were simple, yet carried a weight that pressed down on her chest. The carnival returns. It awaits you. Come where the shadows dance and the music never dies. Your place is reserved, no signature, no explanation, just the chilling invitation. Evelyn's mind raced back to the fragmented pieces of her childhood, the whispered stories her grandmother, Edith Gray, had told in hushed tones near the fireplace. Tales filtered through the haze of fear and secrecy. The carnival that vanished a century ago, a ghostly place of cursed joy and terror, the place her grandmother had fled, never to speak of again. She felt the pull immediately, a magnetic force tugging at her soul, stronger than any logic or fear. It was as if the letter had awakened a dormant part of her, a legacy she had tried to bury beneath years of mundane normalcy. That afternoon, Evelyn packed a small bag, her hands trembling as she included a worn photograph of her grandmother, faded and creased. Her eyes filled with a sorrow Evelyn had never understood until now. The road stretched before her like a dark ribbon, winding toward the unknown. As she drove away from the city, a fog thickened around her car, swallowing the trees and blurring the horizon. The radio crackled with static, the usual hum of music replaced by distant echoes, laughter, carnival music, the faint clinking of glass bottles. She blinked, and the sounds vanished, leaving only the oppressive silence. Through the mist, shapes began to materialize. The skeletal frame of a Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its rusted spokes creaking softly in the still air. Tattered banners fluttered like ghostly flags, and the faint glow of flickering bulbs outlined the twisted carousel horses frozen mid-gallop. Evelyn's breath caught, her heart pounding like a drum beat in the quiet. The carnival was real. It was here. Memories surged unbidden, her grandmother's frantic escape, the warnings never fully explained, the legacy of fear that had shadowed her family for generations. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, the road ahead uncertain but impossible to resist. As twilight deepened, the carnival's silhouette swallowed by the mist, Evelyn felt the first true taste of the terror and cursed joy that awaited her. The letter was no mere invitation, it was a summons, and the carnival would not release its new guest so easily. Her journey had begun, and there was no turning back now. The mist thickened around her as the ancient carnival breathed awake once more, a nightmare reborn from the shadows of time. I stepped through the rusted iron gates, the creak echoing into the heavy, still air like a long-forgotten warning. The carnival lay before me, a sprawling graveyard of memories and faded joy, draped in shadows and the slow decay of time. Tent flaps hung in tatters, their colors bleached by the sun and torn by the relentless wind. The scent of old wood and rusted metal filled my nostrils, mingled with an undercurrent of something darker, something like forgotten sorrow. Every step I took seemed swallowed by silence, yet the silence itself felt alive, watching and waiting. The ground beneath my boots was cracked and littered with leaves and debris, but somewhere beneath it all, the echoes of laughter and screams lingered, as if the carnival's spirit had never truly left. I moved cautiously, drawn deeper into the heart of the deserted grounds. My fingers brushed against a crumbling wall plastered with layers of peeling posters. My breath hitched when I recognized the faded letters, the jagged font spelling out a name I never expected to see here, my own. Evelyn Gray beneath the cracked surface, images of twisted clowns with grotesque smiles and carnival attractions warped by time stared back at me. The ink was blurred, faded, but the letters were unmistakable, my name, printed like a brand, as though this cursed place had claimed me before I even arrived. A cold shiver slid down my spine. How could this be? I had thought I was just following a ghost story, a fragment of family history that had no hold over me. But the carnival was telling me otherwise. It was calling me home, and not as a visitor, but as one of its own. A sudden rustle made me whip my head around, heart hammering in my chest. But there was nothing, just the shifting shadow of a torn banner fluttering weakly in the breeze. Or perhaps something more sinister, something watching from the edges of sight. The carnival breathed around me, a living nightmare cloaked in forgotten delight. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands. The stories my grandmother whispered in fragments, the warnings she left wrapped in riddles and silence, all pressed down on me now like a weight I could not shrug off. The legacy of fear was real, it was here, and it was mine. The sun dipped lower, casting long fingers of twilight that stretched like grasping hands over the decayed grandeur. The colors faded into murky shadows, the carnival's grotesque silhouette twisting into shapes that seemed to pulse with a dark life of their own. The mist began to seep back into the grounds, curling around the broken rides and empty booths like a slow, suffocating breath. I forced myself to take another step, each movement heavy with the knowledge that I had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back, not now. The carnival had summoned me, and it had already claimed my name. The echoes of a faded past whispered through the night, and I was listening. Turning to leave would be to deny the truth, but staying meant facing the legacy that had haunted my family for a century. The carnival was no longer just a story. It was a place of living nightmares, and I was trapped within its cruel embrace. With a deep breath, I pressed onward into the darkness, the weight of the past settling like chains around my soul. Somewhere in the shadows, the carnival barker's twisted smile seemed to flicker and fade, a grotesque welcome to a nightmare that was just beginning. The night was far from over, and the carnival had many secrets left to reveal. I could feel it in the air, in the silence, in the very bones of the place. The legacy of terror was waking, and I was right at its heart. The sun sank behind the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the cracked pavement of the abandoned carnival grounds. Evelyn Gray stood frozen before the skeletal frame of the Ferris wheel, its rusted arms creaking faintly in the cold evening breeze. The broken bulbs along its rim flickered feebly, as if struggling to resist the gathering darkness. Around her, the scent of damp earth mingled with the stale sweetness of long-spilled popcorn and something metallic, sharp enough to prick at her senses. The air was thick with silence, yet beneath it, a distant melody hovered, warped, distorted, and just out of reach. Her lantern's beam wavered as she took a hesitant step forward. The carnival, once a place of joy and laughter, now pulsed with a sinister life of its own. The grotesque attractions, the faded banners, and the peeling paint all seemed to breathe, exhaling a cold breath that whispered secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. As Evelyn moved deeper, the shadows seemed to shift and dance at the edge of her vision. She caught glimpses of figures slipping between tents and behind broken stalls, too quick to be human, too fluid to be mere tricks of the light. Her heart pounded in her chest, a steady drumbeat of fear and fascination. Was she being watched? The sensation prickled her skin, an invisible gaze that made her shoulders stiffen. A soft rustling came from the carousel, its faded horses frozen mid-gallop, their glassy eyes staring blankly into the twilight. The carnival music, faint and warped, rose and fell like a dying heartbeat. Evelyn's breath caught as a whisper curled around her ears, a voice barely audible yet devastatingly clear, her name, Evelyn. She spun around, lantern raised, but found only the mist curling low to the ground, swirling like smoke from some unseen fire. The voices grew low murmurs, laughter twisted into something cruel and sharp. Her mind raced, memories flickering unbidden, her grandmother's frantic escape, the hurried warnings, the half-told stories of an evil lurking beneath the carnival's surface. Suddenly, the world blurred. The edges of her vision shattered like cracked glass, fracturing into shards of past and present. She saw herself, or was it her grandmother, running through these same grounds, eyes wide with terror, the carnival's grotesque amusements melting into nightmare shapes. The carousel horses morphed into snarling beasts, the laughter turning to screams. A cold hand seemed to grip her heart as she stumbled back, breath ragged. The carnival's power was not just in its physical form, but in its ability to twist minds, to ensnare souls in a web of illusions and memories. She was caught in its thrall, pulled deeper with every step. Before her, the tent flaps fluttered in a sudden gust. From within emerged the carnival barker, a grotesque figure clad in tattered finery, his voice a rasping melody that promised joy and escape in equal measure. His cracked smile revealed yellowed teeth, and his eyes gleamed with a predatory light. "Welcome back, Evelyn," he crooned, his words dripping with false warmth. "The carnival has missed you. There's so much to see, so much to feel. Why resist what you were born to embrace?" Evelyn's stomach churned, a mixture of revulsion and an inexplicable pull toward the barker's twisted charisma. She tightened her grip on the lantern, the flame flickering in defiance. "I don't belong here," she whispered, voice trembling but firm. "Oh, but you do," the barker insisted, stepping closer, his shadow stretching long and distorted. "The carnival chooses its own, and it has chosen you." The night deepened around her, the carnival's whispers rising into a chorus of voices that seemed to echo from every corner. Evelyn felt the weight of generations pressing down the legacy of fear, the inheritance of terror. Yet beneath the dread, a stubborn ember of resolve kindled within her. She would not be a victim, not like her grandmother before her. With a shuddering breath, Evelyn turned away from the barker and pressed onward, deeper into the carnival's dark heart. The shadows whispered, the illusions beckoned, and the night stretched endlessly ahead, a tapestry woven from cursed joy and suffocating fear. What awaited her beyond the next tent flap, she could not know. But one thing was certain, the carnival had never truly closed, and neither had the nightmare it promised. Her footsteps echoed hollowly as she disappeared into the mist, the carnival alive around her, watching, waiting. And somewhere, deep within the shifting shadows, a faint, sinister laugh trailed after her, a sound that promised the horrors to come. The night was far from over. The fog hung thick and heavy over the midway, coiling around the rotting wood and twisted metal like a suffocating shroud. I moved forward cautiously, each step muffled by the damp earth beneath my boots, the silence so complete it pressed against my ears like a physical weight. The carnival was alive in a way that defied explanation, though there was no laughter, no music, only the faint, persistent echo of something old and wicked stirring in the shadows. A sudden rasping voice cut through the silence, sharp and brittle as broken glass. "Step right up, Missy. Don't be shy now," it crooned, the words weaving through the mist like a hypnotic melody. The sound sent a spike of cold dread through me. My heart hammered in my chest as I turned toward the source, eyes straining to pierce the dense fog. There, stepping from a warped and peeling tent flap, was the barker. He was grotesque in the most unsettling way, a man, or what had once been a man, twisted by the carnival's dark heart. His face was a mask of exaggerated features, sunken eyes gleaming with an unnatural light that seemed to bore into my very soul. His grin stretched unnervingly wide, revealing uneven, yellowed teeth that caught the faint glow of the dying light. He wore the tattered remains of a once bright carnival coat, sequins dulled and dirt-streaked, his every movement jerky and unnerving, like a marionette on fraying strings. "Welcome to the show, Evelyn," he hissed, his voice dripping with false sweetness that made my skin crawl. "You've come so far, so brave to answer the call. The carnival's waited a long time for you." My breath caught. How did he know my name? My fingers clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm not here for your games," I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound steady. "I'm not one of your victims." He chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling in a tomb. "Oh, but everyone's a victim here, darling. That's the beauty of it. Joy and terror hand in hand. You can't have one without the other." "You think you can walk away? Ha!" "The carnival doesn't let go, not once it's claimed you." I took a step back, but the ground seemed to shift beneath me, the mist thickening until the world became a swirling blur of shadows and half-seen faces. The barker's voice grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around me like a suffocating cloak. "Come closer. See the wonders. Hear the laughter. Feel the thrill. This is your inheritance, Evelyn, the legacy your grandmother tried to run from but couldn't escape. Will you be the one to break the cycle? Or will you join the chorus of those who dance forever in the carnival's shadow?" His eyes flickered with something darker than a hunger that chilled me to my bones. I shook my head fiercely, forcing myself to stand tall. "I won't be trapped here. Not like her. Not like anyone else." The barker's grin faltered for a heartbeat, replaced by a flicker of something almost human regret, maybe. Then it was gone, swallowed by the carnival's sinister pulse. "We shall see, Evelyn. We shall see," he whispered, stepping back into the mist, his form dissolving into the fog like smoke. The silence returned, but it was heavier now, charged with a terrible promise. I stood alone in the heart of the cursed carnival, the weight of the barker's words settling over me like a dark tide. The carnival was not just a place, it was a force, a living nightmare that fed on fear and hope alike. And I was caught in its web. I clenched my fists, the cold night air biting at my skin. Somewhere deep inside, a fierce flame flickered, a stubborn ember of defiance. I would not let the carnival devour me, I would fight. But as the mist curled and whispered around me, I knew this was only the beginning. The barker's call echoed in my mind, a haunting refrain that promised the carnival would never truly let me go. And I was terrified, but I was ready. The twilight had long since surrendered to night when Evelyn found herself wandering deeper into the labyrinthine sprawl of tents and broken rides. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of mildew and rust, mingling with faint, sweeter notes that reminded her of old wood and stale popcorn. She moved cautiously, the gravel crunching softly beneath her boots, every shadow seeming to twitch with unseen life. A chill wind whispered past, pulling at her dark hair, and in the distance, a faint, flickering light caught her eye. Drawn by a mixture of curiosity and dread, Evelyn slipped toward the glow. The carnival around her seemed to breathe in a slow, unnatural rhythm, the decaying banners fluttering like ghostly flags in an unseen breeze. As she neared, the light resolved into the form of a woman, pale, almost translucent, her figure shimmering like smoke caught in a candle's flicker. Her eyes, bright and wavering, were the first thing Evelyn noticed, twin flames of amber and gold that danced with a fragile, spectral glow. "Evelyn," the figure whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, yet it carried through the still night with unnerving clarity. "You read deeper in than you know." Evelyn's heart jumped. "Who are you?" The woman's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Names have power, but some truths are heavier than names. I am Mara. I was like you once, caught, waiting, hoping." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, a shiver running down her spine. "Waiting for what?" Mara's gaze flickered, shadows playing across her delicate features. "For release, for the curse to break. But the carnival, it never truly lets go. It feeds on hope, twisting it into fear." The words hung between them like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Evelyn swallowed hard, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on her chest. "My grandmother escaped," she said, voice trembling. "She left warnings, but I didn't understand." Mara stepped closer, the air cooling around them. Your grandmother's flight was a reprieve, not freedom. The legacy is bound to your blood. The carnival demands its due every century. You were summoned because the cycle must continue unless you can break it. Evelyn's breath caught. How? Mara's eyes flickered brighter, momentarily casting a warm glow. Listen to the whispers beneath the laughter. See beyond the twisted smiles. The ringmaster's mask hides a broken soul, and his power is tied to the stories left untold. Find the cracks in the carnival's facade. That is where hope flickers, fragile as candlelight. A sudden gust swept through the tents, and Mara's form began to waver, her edges blurring like mist caught in a breeze. I cannot stay long, she warned. Beware the barker's call and the shadows that watch. You are not alone, but trust is a scarce currency here. Evelyn reached out instinctively, but Mara's hand slipped through hers like vapor.
Wait!
Remember, Mara's voice faded with the wind. The curse is not just in the place, but in the blood. To break free, you must confront what you fear most yourself. And with that, Mara dissolved into the swirling mist, leaving Evelyn standing alone beneath the warped canopy of a carousel whose faded horses seemed to watch her with glassy, eternal eyes. The silence that followed was thick and profound, broken only by the distant, hollow creak of a rusted Ferris wheel turning in the night. Evelyn's heart pounded fiercely, her mind racing with Mara's cryptic words. She felt a strange mixture of comfort and dread, comfort in the knowledge that she was not utterly isolated, dread in the realization of the battle yet to come. She bent down, her fingers brushing against the cold, cracked wood of the carousel's platform. The flickering lights above cast long, dancing shadows, and Evelyn felt the carnival's pulse thrum beneath her skin, a heartbeat of cursed joy and inherited terror. As she straightened, she caught sight of a faded poster fluttering nearby, the edges torn and stained with time. Her own name stared back at her, bold and unyielding, a chilling herald of her fate. The carnival had called her, and now she stood at the threshold of a nightmare that reached far beyond the physical. Evelyn inhaled deeply, the cold night air filling her lungs. She would not run, not yet. The legacy was hers to face the flickering candlelight of hope, and the suffocating shadows of fear intertwined in a dance as old as the carnival itself. Ahead, the carnival beckoned with twisted smiles and broken promises. Somewhere in the murk and madness, the answers waited, and so did the ringmaster, lurking behind his cracked porcelain mask, watching, always watching. With a final glance toward the fading mist where Mara had vanished, Evelyn squared her shoulders and stepped forward, the flickering candlelight of courage sparking within her heart. The carnival's dark symphony was far from over, and she was its reluctant, yet defiant, new player. The air inside the dilapidated trailer was thick with the scent of dust and forgotten years. Evelyn Gray crouched low on the creaking wooden floorboards, her fingers trembling slightly as they sifted through the yellowed photographs and brittle letters scattered around her. Each piece of memorabilia was a fragment of a past she had only glimpsed in half-remembered stories and cryptic warnings passed down by her grandmother, Edith Gray. The dim, fading light from the cracked window painted long shadows that danced ominously on the peeling walls, as if the very space around her was breathing with the weight of untold secrets. Her heart pounded with a mixture of melancholy and curiosity. She had come to this forsaken place not only to confront the physical remnants of the carnival, but to dive headfirst into the fractured history that had shaped her family's tortured legacy. It was here, amidst the relics of a time long gone, that Evelyn hoped to find the answers that had eluded her for so many years. A faded photograph caught her eye, a black and white image of a woman with sharp features and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken sorrows. The woman was unmistakably her grandmother. Evelyn's breath hitched as she traced the contours of the picture with a trembling finger. Edith Gray had escaped the carnival's clutches decades ago, but the shadows of that nightmarish place had never truly released her. Underneath the photograph, A leather-bound journal lay half-buried under a pile of tattered letters. Its cracked cover was worn from years of handling, and the faint smell of aged paper and leather wafted up as Evelyn gingerly opened it. The pages inside were brittle, filled with her grandmother's slanted handwriting, frantic, desperate, yet resolute. As she began to read, the world around her seemed to dissolve. The journal's words pulled her into a tapestry of memories and warnings. Edith's entries spoke of the Carnival's sinister bargains, the cursed pact that bound souls to its twisted realm, and the fleeting moments of freedom that were always snatched away too soon. Evelyn's pulse quickened with every line. The legacy of fear that had haunted her bloodline was no mere superstition. The journal revealed a chilling truth: the Carnival's curse was not just a place, but a living entity, a malignant force that fed on the terror and joy of its victims. Her grandmother's escape had been a temporary reprieve, a brief flicker of light in a numbing darkness. The curse was inherited, woven into their very blood, demanding sacrifice and submission. Evelyn's mind raced with the implications. The fragmented tales she had grown up with now took on a terrifying clarity. She was not merely a visitor to the Carnival's ghostly grounds, she was its next chosen victim, ensnared by the same legacy that had nearly destroyed her grandmother. The weight of this revelation settled heavily on her shoulders as the fading twilight outside turned the Carnival grounds into a mist-shrouded silhouette. Faint strains of distant carnival music drifted on the cold breeze, a haunting melody that seemed to mock her resolve. Yet beneath the dread, a spark of determination ignited within Evelyn. She would not be another lost soul swallowed by the Carnival's cursed joy. With the journal clutched tightly in her hands, Evelyn rose to her feet, her gaze lifting to meet the encroaching darkness. The legacy of fear was undeniable, but so was her will to break free. The past was a chain, yes, but perhaps, just perhaps, she held the key to unlocking it. As the shadows deepened and the Carnival's grotesque silhouette loomed ever closer, Evelyn whispered a vow to the night. She would confront the terror that had haunted her family for generations. She would face the Carnival's curse head-on, no matter the cost. The fragments of her grandmother's story had become her own, and the fight for freedom was only beginning. The journal slipped into her satchel with a soft rustle, the worn leather a comforting weight against her side. Outside, the mist thickened, swirling around the Carnival's decaying rides and faded tents as if alive. Evelyn stepped forward, each footfall a defiant echo in the silence. The legacy of the Carnival was a shadow that stretched long and dark, but she was determined to bring it into the light. Her breath came steady now, despite the chill that gnawed at her skin. The Carnival awaited, pulsing with cursed delight and lurking horror, and Evelyn Grey was ready to face the nightmare that had been passed down through her bloodline. The past and present were converging, and the hour of reckoning had come. The night deepened, and with it, the promise of revelations yet to come. Evelyn's journey into the heart of the Carnival's curse was far from over. But armed with the fragments of a family curse, she would step onward, into the unknown, and whatever fate awaited, she would meet it with eyes wide open. The mist clung to the ground like a living thing, curling and twisting around my ankles as I waited at the edge of the Carnival grounds. The skeletal remains of tents and rusted rides loomed out of the fog, half swallowed by the eerie grayness that wrapped the place in a ghostly shroud. Despite my trembling hands and the cold prickling at the back of my neck, I stood rooted, heart pounding in my chest. The letter, anonymous and cryptic, had pulled me here, but now a new presence was about to join the nightmare. From the swirling mist emerged a figure, hesitant but determined. Tommy, my childhood friend, the one person who had known me before the stories and shadows took hold. His silhouette grew clearer, revealing a rugged frame, tangled hair, and eyes that flickered with a wary light. He stopped a few feet from me, arms crossed tightly across his chest, as though bracing against the chill or the weight of what lay ahead. "Evelyn," he said, voice low and guarded. "You sure you want me here? This place? It's not just some old fairground." I swallowed hard, the words from my grandmother echoing in my mind, warnings steeped in fear and urgency. Yet seeing Tummy, so solid and real, gave me a flicker of courage. "I don't want to do this alone," I admitted. "You don't have to believe all of it. Just stay with me." A tense silence settled between us, broken only by the distant creaks and groans of the carnival's decaying bones. Together we stepped forward, the ground beneath us crunching with debris and dead leaves. The midway stretched out before us, a twisted tableau of faded colors and broken dreams. Tattered banners fluttered in a wind that carried faint traces of laughter, mocking, hollow. As we moved deeper, the air thickened with unease. The melancholic Kolyop music I thought I heard at first turned into distorted echoes, warping into sinister whispers. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, and I felt eyes, countless unseen eyes watching, waiting. Tommy's presence was a balm, yet he too stiffened, his jaw clenched tight. "You really think this place is cursed?" he asked, his voice barely masking skepticism. "I don't know," I whispered. "But it's here, and it's waiting for me." Tommy snorted softly, shaking his head. "Sounds like something out of a horror movie. You've been reading too much of that old stuff your grandmother left behind." His brashness stung, but beneath it lay a fierce loyalty. I could sense the conflict in him, wanting to protect me but struggling to accept the nightmare I was trapped in. The tension simmered as we pressed on, navigating past the broken rides and shattered booths. We reached the funhouse, its warped entrance gaping like a maw. The mirrors inside reflected us in grotesque distortions, elongated limbs, twisted faces, eyes too large or too small. I caught my breath as one mirror showed me with hollow sockets, my fears laid bare. Tommy's reflection cracked into a sneer, mocking and accusing. "This place plays tricks," he muttered, gripping my arm. "Don't let it get inside your head." But the carnival wasn't just playing tricks, it was feeding on our fears, twisting memories and reality until the lines blurred. I could see that Tommy was beginning to feel it too, the oppressive weight pressing on his skepticism. "We have to find out what's really going on," I said, voice steady despite the dread. "Together." He nodded, eyes fierce now with determination. "All right, Evelyn, I'm with you. But if this gets too weird, I'm dragging you out of here." The fragile alliance forged in the haunted Midway was our only hope against the legacy of terror that clawed at us both. As we stepped back into the mist, the carnival pulsed around us, alive, malevolent, waiting for the next move in a game we had no choice but to play. The air hung thick with the scent of rust and decay as I stepped cautiously onto the Ferris wheel. The once vibrant ride now a skeletal relic groaning under the weight of forgotten years. Each step on the corroded metal stairs echoed hollowly, the sound swallowed by a cold, unnatural silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. My breath curled in the chilling air, mingling with the faint, distant creaks that whispered secrets I was never meant to hear. As I reached the center platform, the carnival spread before me like a dying beast, its grotesque features twisted by time and malevolence. The Ferris wheel's glass panels were shattered, jagged edges catching the dim light of a pale, ghostly moon that hung low in the sky. In the broken reflections, shadowy figures flickered, faces contorted with terror, regret, and despair. I recognized some twisted echoes of the countless souls the carnival had claimed over the centuries, their forms trapped in endless torment. A shiver ran down my spine as I caught sight of one figure, in particular a woman, whose eyes held the same haunted fear I'd seen in my grandmother's faded photographs. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, lips trembling as if begging for release. The cold realization settled deep in my gut. These were not mere illusions. They were echoes of the past, fragments of lives ensnared by this cursed place. Stepping away hastily, I found myself drawn toward the funhouse tent, its entrance yawning like a gaping maw. The peeling paint and torn canvas flapped weakly in the breeze, but inside, a different kind of horror awaited. The funhouse mirrors twisted and warped every reflection, turning flesh and bone into grotesque caricatures. I hesitated before stepping inside, the musty air thick with the scent of mildew, and something far fouler, the stench of forgotten agony. My reflection fractured across 100 shards of glass, each one distorting my face into monstrous visages. In one, my eyes bulged grotesquely, leaking shadows. In another, my mouth stretched impossibly wide, dripping with darkness. Whispers curled around me, voices half heard, fragmented memories of fear and pain that I could not place. "You belong here," one hissed. "You cannot escape the legacy." A sudden surge of nausea clawed at my stomach, but I forced myself to focus. These were tricks, cruel machinations of the Carnival designed to break my spirit. Yet each warped reflection felt like a mirror to my soul, exposing the vulnerabilities I fought so hard to conceal. Memories of my grandmother's warnings, the fragmented stories of her escape, and the looming curse all meshed into a suffocating fog. From the shadows, a sudden movement startled me. Tommy's voice cut through the haze. "Evelyn! Get away from that mirror! It's trying to trap you." He stood at the tent's entrance, his posture tense and defensive, eyes scanning the darkness. His face, rugged and worn by disbelief, held a fierce protectiveness that both comforted and unnerved me. Tommy had come to this nightmare not as a believer, but as my loyal friend, skeptical, brash, but unwavering. Before I could respond, figures began to emerge from the gloom, Carnival workers, but not as I had ever imagined them. Their faces were blurred, shifting like smoke, features melting and reforming in grotesque patterns. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, as if pulled by invisible strings. They reached out with elongated fingers, their touch cold as death, trying to pull me deeper into the Carnival's grasp. Tommy stepped forward, voice raised, trying to keep them at bay.
"Stay back! She's not yours!"
The Carnival workers hissed and recoiled, but their presence was a clear reminder the Carnival would not let me go willingly. It was alive, a malevolent force that fed on fear and despair, eager to claim yet another soul. From the darkness, a voice slithered through the air, smooth, velvety, yet dripping with menace. The Carnival barker. "Come now, Evelyn," he crooned, his grotesque figure stepping into a shaft of sickly yellow light. His grin was impossibly wide, teeth jagged and glinting like broken glass. "There's joy to be found here, if you only dare to take it. Escape is an illusion, but happiness, that's real. If you were willing to pay the price." Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stood my ground. His voice promised so much release, delight, freedom from fear, and yet I knew it was a poison wrapped in velvet. The Carnival's joy was a mask, a lure to keep victims chained in its endless nightmare. "I'm not yours," I said, voice trembling but firm. "I won't be your next victim." The barker's grin faltered, just for a moment, before his twisted laughter echoed around the funhouse. "We shall see, dear Evelyn. We shall see." As the latter faded into the night, I felt the Carnival pulse beneath my feet, a living entity that breathed in shadows and exhaled despair. The illusions, the visions, the twisted memories, all were weapons in its arsenal. But so too was my resolve. The legacy of fear was mine, yes, but so was the stubborn spark of hope. Tommy reached out, gripping my arm. "We have to keep moving, this place. It's trying to break us." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The battle was just beginning, and the attractions of decay were only the first trial. But I would face them, for my grandmother, for myself, for the chance to end the curse that had haunted my bloodline for generations. Together, we stepped away from the funhouse, the Carnival's shadows stretching long behind us. Somewhere deep within the broken mirrors and rusted rides, the ringmaster watched, waiting for me to falter. But I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Not yet. The night was far from over, and the Carnival's grip was tightening. But so was my resolve. This was my inheritance, a legacy of terror and cursed joy, and I was ready to fight for my freedom, no matter the cost. And with that thought, I plunged deeper into the heart of the nightmare. The tent creaked under the weight of silence. shadows pooling in the corners like spilled ink as I stared at the flickering figure before me. Mara's pale form wavered, her eyes dancing like candlelight caught in a draught, casting unsteady glints that seemed to pierce through the gloom. I swallowed hard, my breath hitching as the cold air seeped into my bones, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. "You said you escaped," I whispered, voice trembling, "but you're still here. What does that mean?" Her lips curved faintly, a sorrowful smile that barely lifted the corners of her mouth. "Partial," she said softly, the word barely more than a breath. I slipped through the cracks, but the Carnival's hold is not so easily broken. I exist between worlds, neither fully free, nor wholly trapped. I wanted to ask more, but the weight of her presence pressed down like a shroud. The Carnival's pulse thrummed faintly beneath the ground, a sinister heartbeat that connected us all. "How?" I pressed. "How do I break free?" Mara's flickering form moved closer, hands trembling as she reached into the shadows and produced a bundle of brittle papers. Faded maps, torn journals, and scrawled notes, all relics from victims long lost to the Carnival's maw. I took them carefully, the fragile papers crackling beneath my fingers, and spread them out on the cracked wooden floor. Each mark, each symbol, each fraying edge told a story of cycles repeating, of souls ensnared, of battles fought and lost. "The curse is ancient," Mara murmured, woven from fear and desperation, from promises of joy that mask torment. "The ringmaster feeds on it, perpetuating the cycle to sustain his wretched existence." My heart pounded as I scanned the writings. There were references to a ritual, a moment when the Carnival's pulse weakens, a fleeting chance to sever the bindings. But the warnings were clear: the price is high, and failure means eternal entrapment. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, suspicion lacing my tone. "What do you gain?" She looked away, eyes flickering uncertainly. "Because I remember the taste of freedom, and I cannot bear to see another lost soul fall as I did. Our fates are intertwined, your bloodline carries the key. But beware, the ringmaster's reach is long, and his illusions deadly." A sudden chill swept through the tent, the Carnival's malevolent energy tightening around us like a noose. Mara's form shimmered, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You must prepare, Evelyn. The battle ahead is not just with him, but with the darkness inside you, the legacy you inherited." I nodded, the weight of her words settling deep in my bones. For the first time, the path ahead felt both clearer and more terrifying. The Carnival was no longer just a place, it was a living nightmare, and I was now a part of its twisted story. But with Mara's fragile hope guiding me, I resolved to fight back, to confront the ringmaster and the curse that had haunted my family for generations. Outside, the Carnival lights flickered under a sickly moon, their glow casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to leer and reach. The pulse quickened, and I could feel the eyes of the ringmaster watching, waiting. The game was far from over. As Mara's flickering form faded into the mist, I was left alone with the brittle papers and a heart pounding with dread and determination. The secrets she had shared were my only weapon, but also a reminder of the darkness I had yet to face. The Carnival's grip was tightening, and every step forward meant risking everything. I gathered the papers, clutching them to my chest as the cold night air bit into my skin. Somewhere beyond the shadows, the Carnival's twisted melody played on, a siren song of cursed joy and inevitable terror. But this time, I would fight back. This time, I would not run. The air inside the tent was thick with a stale, sickly sweetness that clung to Evelyn's skin as she stepped cautiously forward. Around her, the faded remnants of the Carnival's glory whispered secrets in a language only the cursed could understand. Torn photographs fluttered in a sudden, unnatural breeze, and scattered letters with fading ink danced like desperate ghosts. Each fragment seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of a past long buried but never truly gone. Evelyn's breath hitched as a memory surged unbidden, vivid and intrusive. She was no longer standing amid the ruins, but in a shadowed room suffused with the glow of flickering lanterns. There, a younger woman, her grandmother Edith, moved with frantic urgency, gathering a handful of worn belongings into a battered suitcase. The tension in Edith's eyes was palpable, a mixture of dread and fierce determination. Her hands trembled, but she didn't falter, stuffing a bundle of letters and a small, blood-stained locket into the depths of the suitcase. The scene shifted abruptly. Evelyn saw the carnival outside through a grimy window, tents billowing in the night breeze like dark specters. The familiar sound of distant laughter twisted into a cruel mockery, echoing off the canvas walls. Edith's gaze darted anxiously. She was running out of time. Evelyn blinked, the vision dissolving as the tense, musty darkness settled back around her. She knelt to retrieve something from the dusty floor, a cracked porcelain mask, its sinister smile frozen in a grotesque grin. The moment her fingers brushed its cold surface, the carnival's ambient noises warped strangely. Whispers slithered through the air, voices overlapping in a cacophony that blurred the edges of time. Laughter, screams, and the faint strains of a melancholy carnival tune intertwined, collapsing the boundary between past and present. Suddenly, Evelyn was drawn into another vision. She stood at the edge of a dimly lit stage where Edith faced a towering figure cloaked in shadows. The ringmaster. His cracked porcelain mask gleamed under the pale light, his smile both inviting and cruel. Edith's voice trembled but carried defiance as she spoke, her words lost to the swirling mist, but heavy with meaning. The ringmaster's presence was suffocating, a palpable force pressing down on her very soul. Evelyn felt a pang of sorrow as she watched the spectral replay the last stand of a woman trapped within a nightmare centuries too long. Edith's eyes, so much like her own, glistened with tears born of fear and unyielding hope. The carnival's dark magic writhed around them like living shadows, hungry and relentless. The vision faded, leaving Evelyn alone in the silent tent. Her hands trembled as she clutched the blood-stained locket, its weight a tangible reminder of the legacy she bore. The past was no longer distant. It bled into her present, drawing her deeper into the cursed web her grandmother had tried so desperately to escape. A shiver ran down Evelyn's spine as the carnival's oppressive atmosphere closed in. The line between memory and reality blurred, threatening to swallow her whole. Yet beneath the dread, a fierce resolve kindled. She would not be another lost soul trapped in the carnival's endless cycle. She would face the darkness, confront the ringmaster, and fight for the fragile hope her grandmother had died to protect. But as Evelyn stepped out of the tent, the echo of Edith's final words lingered in her mind, a haunting question without an answer. Could she truly change what was written in the blood of their family? Or was she destined to repeat the nightmare? The carnival's shadows stretched long and cold, and somewhere deep within, the past was waiting to claim its due. The darkness of the carnival night pressed in around me, thick and suffocating, as if the very air had grown heavy with the weight of years of forgotten suffering. I moved cautiously along the cracked boards of the midway, the faint flicker of dying lanterns casting long, jittery shadows that danced like specters among the rusting rides and tattered tents. It was here, in this liminal space, where joy had long since curdled into something far more sinister, that I first saw him, the ringmaster. He emerged from the mist like a wraith summoned by the carnival's own haunted breath. Towering and gaunt, his figure seemed almost impossibly tall, draped in a long, dark coat that whispered secrets as it brushed the ground. But it was his face that rooted me in place, a cracked porcelain mask, pale and gleaming faintly in the lantern light, split by a sinister smile that was too wide, too knowing. Beneath the top hat that crowned his head, a cold, malevolent intelligence flickered in those blackened eye holes, promising dread and despair with equal measure. For a moment I could only stare, my heart hammering with a primal mixture of fear and fascination. The carnival's pulse seemed to quicken in his presence. The hollowed laughter of distant echoes grew sharper, more urgent. Around him the carnival workers stirred, their faces pale and vacant, eyes empty as they moved in a chilling, synchronized rhythm. They were puppets bound by invisible strings, their every step dictated by the ringmaster's silent command. A whisper brushed my ear, soft as a breeze through dead leaves. Turning sharply, I found Mara standing beside me, her pale, almost translucent form flickering like candlelight in the gloom. Her eyes, bright and knowing, met mine with a wordless warning. The carnival's atmosphere deepened further. Colors bled and twisted, sounds warped into grotesque symphonies that clawed at my sanity. The ringmaster's voice, when he spoke, slithered through the night like smoke. It was both invitation and threat, a velvet coil tightening around my chest. "Welcome back, Evelyn," he murmured, voice smooth and cold. "The carnival has awaited your return, and the legacy you carry is more precious than you know." My breath caught, memories and fears crashing over me in a relentless tide. The carnivals of my childhood stories, the laughter, the fleeting joy, all lay shattered beneath the weight of his presence. This was no mere man. He was the embodiment of every nightmare my grandmother had warned me about. Yet beneath the dread, a flicker of something else stirred, a stubborn ember of defiance. I was not merely a victim to be claimed. I was a woman who had traced the shadows back to their source, who carried the scars and strength of a legacy that demanded confrontation. Summoning the courage that had carried me this far, I fixed my gaze on the ringmaster's cracked mask. "I won't be your prisoner." His smile deepened, eerie and unyielding. "Oh, Evelyn, the carnival never lets go. But perhaps you will play your part yet." The carnival seemed to breathe around us, its grotesque attractions pulsing with dark life, the scent of decay heavy in the air. I felt the curse tighten like a noose, but also the steely resolve that had been forged through fear and loss. This was the moment the nightmare sharpened into clarity. The battle for my soul and the legacy of my bloodline was only just beginning. I glanced at Mara, whose flickering form offered a fragile beacon of hope amid the encroaching shadows. The ringmaster's shadow loomed large, but so did my determination. And as the carnival whispered its dark promises, I knew the fight to break the cycle would demand every ounce of strength I had left. The night deepened, and the carnival watched, waiting for the next move. I was no longer just a guest summoned by a letter. I was a challenger standing at the heart of the storm, where joy had been twisted into terror, and the past refused to stay buried. And the ringmaster smiled beneath his cracked mask, knowing that the game had changed. But so had I. The cold air clung to us as we stood beneath the flickering lantern on the cracked pavement of the carnival's midway. Shadows stretched long and twisted between the rusted rides and peeling tents, the silence broken only by the distant, warped strains of a calliope. Tommy's brows were furrowed, his jaw tight with restrained frustration. "Evelyn," he said, voice low and edged with disbelief, "I don't know what you want me to see here. This place is just a bunch of old, broken junk. You can't seriously believe in all this supernatural stuff. It's just stories your grandmother told you to scare you." I stared at him, my heart pounding hard enough to echo in my ears. "It's real, Tommy. I've seen things that can't be explained away. The carnival isn't just abandoned, it's alive in a way that's unnatural. It's been calling me. It's my legacy, whether I like it or not." He shook his head, taking a step back, the dim light catching the wary glint in his eyes. "I want to believe you, I do, but there has to be another explanation. Fear makes people see monsters in shadows." I swallowed hard, my voice cracking. "You think I'm afraid, I'm terrified, but this isn't just fear talking. The carnival is waiting for me, Tommy. Waiting to claim me like it did my grandmother." The tension between us thickened, a fragile thread threatening to snap. Tommy ran a hand through his messy hair and let out a breath. "Okay," he said finally, "show me something real." I nodded, leading him deeper into the maze of decayed tents and flickering lights. We reached the broken hall of mirrors, the glass fogged and cracked, reflecting warped, distorted images of us both. Suddenly, without warning, a shard of mirror shattered, sending glittering fragments skittering across the ground. Tommy jumped back, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. My gaze was fixed on the shadows that seemed to ripple across the broken glass. In that moment, I saw the flicker of something else, something watching us. Tommy's bravado faltered, replaced by a dawning unease. Maybe there's more to this than I thought, he admitted quietly. For the first time, I saw the real weight of fear settle in his eyes. As the distorted carnival melody drifted through the air, a strange calm settled between us. Tommy's voice was low but steady. "I'm with you, Evelyn. No matter what comes." It was a fragile promise, but in the heart of the cursed carnival, it was enough to spark a flicker of hope. Yet beneath that hope simmered a cold truth. The carnival's grip was tightening, and our fight was just beginning. The shadows weren't just illusions anymore, they were warnings. Our bond was fragile, tested by doubt and terror, but it was the only thing keeping the encroaching darkness at bay. The carnival's sinister dance went on around us, and with every step, the line between friend and foe blurred. I didn't know if we could survive what lay ahead, but I knew this: I wouldn't face it alone. And Tommy, skeptical, stubborn Tommy, wasn't ready to let me fall into the carnival's endless night. The night thickened, and the carnival awaited. Our story was far from over. "Come on," I said, gripping Tommy's arm. "There's more you need to see." And with that, we plunged further into the heart of the nightmare. The carnival's call was growing louder, and so was the legacy I was determined to break. The mist clung thickly to the air as Evelyn and Tommy stepped cautiously onto the cracked, faded wood of the carousel platform. The once joyful ride was a grotesque parody of itself, chipped paint peeled from the horses' bodies, their once bright manes dulled to sickly streaks of grey. Yet as Evelyn's gaze fixed on one particular horse, she felt a tremor of unease ripple through her. The creature's glassy eye seemed to shift, bleeding a strange, iridescent color that pulsed rhythmically, as if the carousel was more than a mere machine. Tommy's voice broke the silence. "This place's heart is beating. Can you feel it?" Evelyn nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. The carousel began to spin, slow at first, then accelerating wildly. The world around them blurred, the carnival tents stretched and bent like reflections in a disturbed pond. Colors bleeding and twisting into surreal patterns that defied logic. The merry tune that once echoed with innocent delight warped into a discordant cacophony, the notes stretching and snapping like a spider's web being torn. With every revolution, Evelyn's stomach lurched. She gripped Tommy's arm, her knuckles white. "We have to keep moving," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the twisted music. This isn't just a place, it's alive." Tommy's eyes darted nervously. Alive and hungry, they stumbled off the carousel, the ground beneath seeming to pulse with a heartbeat matching the ride's furious pace. The tents surrounding them shifted subtly, their fabric rippling as if breathing. Shadows stretched long and thin, crawling up and down the striped canvas like dark fingers. The familiar laughter of carnival goers echoed faintly but was warped, twisted into eerie laughter that pricked at the edges of sanity. Evelyn pulled her coat tighter around her. The main tent loomed ahead, its entrance a gaping maw of darkness. As they approached, the carnival music morphed into a slow, sinister melody that vibrated deep in Evelyn's chest. It was a song she didn't want to hear, yet couldn't turn away from. The tent's walls seemed to ripple like water, a living membrane that swallowed light and sound. Inside, the air was thick with a damp, metallic scent, the unmistakable odor of rust and decay mixed with something sweeter, something poisonous. The shadows inside danced with a life of their own, flitting just beyond the edge of vision. Evelyn's heart pounded as her footsteps echoed hollowly, swallowed quickly by the oppressive silence. Ahead, the funhouse mirrors awaited. Once a source of childish amusement, now they were portals into nightmares. Evelyn caught her reflection and gasped. Her image fractured, splitting into dozens of shards, each shard showing a twisted version of herself. Some smiled with malicious grins, others wept tears of black ink, and all whispered secrets she dared not listen to. "You belong here," they hissed. "You always have." A surge of panic rose in her chest, but with it came a stubborn flame of defiance. She clenched her fists and forced herself to focus on the real Evelyn, the one who refused to surrender. She stepped forward, shattering the illusions with a determined shout, the glass cracking and splintering under the weight of her will. Beyond the mirrors, the carnival seemed to palpitate in rhythm with her racing pulse. A gust of wind swept through the tents, carrying with it the mingled sounds of laughter and screams. The fabric walls swayed as if inhaling deeply, ready to exhale a storm of terror. Evelyn's breath caught. This place was a living nightmare, a monster breathing beneath its mask of joy. Tommy's voice pierced the tension. "We can't let it win." Evelyn nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. The carnival's pulse was relentless, its hunger insatiable. Yet deep inside, a fierce resolve took root. She would not be another lost soul, another name etched into the faded posters. She would fight, clawing her way through the cursed joy and crushing terror alike. As they moved forward, the carnival's twisted landscape shifted again, tents folded into themselves, rides seemed to dissolve into mist, and the sky above churned with unnatural clouds. Time felt fractured, moments stretching and collapsing unpredictably. Every step was a battle, every breath a defiance. Evelyn's senses screamed for escape, but her mind held firm, fending off the seductive whispers that promised relief if only she surrendered. The carnival's pulse was growing stronger, its beat a drum that echoed through her bones. It was a warning, a challenge. To survive, Evelyn would have to embrace the terror and the joy, the pain and the pleasure, all the cursed dualities the carnival embodied. Ahead lay the unknown, but she would not face it alone. Tommy was by her side, skeptical but steadfast, a beacon of human light in the shadows of nightmare. The carnival's pulse quickened, and Evelyn steeled herself. This living nightmare was far from over, but she was ready. The fight for her soul, for the legacy she sought to break, had only just begun. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a low, guttural laugh echoed through the shifting tents. Somewhere in the shadows, the ringmaster watched, his cracked porcelain mask glinting in the flickering light, a sinister smile playing at the edges. The carnival's heartbeat was also his, and it would not stop until it claimed her entirely. Evelyn swallowed hard, gripping Tommy's hand tightly. "We keep moving," she said, voice resolute, "no matter what comes." And with that, they stepped deeper into the carnival's pulsing, twisted heart, where joy and terror were one and the nightmare never ended. The tent was heavy with shadows, the flickering lanterns casting grotesque shapes that danced on canvas walls like restless spirits. Evelyn's breath caught as a pale figure emerged from the darkness, eyes flickering like candlelight, steady and unwavering despite the eerie surroundings. Mara's presence was both a comfort and a reminder of the liminal trap they were caught in. "There is a way," Mara whispered, her voice barely rising above the crackling of the lantern flames. "A way to end this, to break the curse that binds us all. But it will not be easy." Evelyn's heart pounded as she stepped closer, her fingers trembling. "Tell me. Anything." Mara's gaze flickered, shadows playing across her translucent face. "The ringmaster, he's the source, the anchor of the carnival's power. To break free, you must confront him directly. Not run, not hide. Face him and unravel the dark pact that holds him and us all captive." The words hung heavy in the stale air, a fragile beacon amid the suffocating dread. Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of generations pressing down on her. Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her mind, stories of terror masked as joy, of escape that was never truly escape. The carnival seemed to pulse around her, the grotesque rides creaking, the tents whispering secrets. The malevolence that had stalked her steps grew thicker, the laughter of the ringmaster echoing distantly, a sinister melody that promised pain and despair. Evelyn's eyes drifted to a faded photograph clenched in her hand, her grandmother, stern and wary, a woman who had once fled these very shadows. The legacy was hers now, the choice laid bare. Could she summon the courage to face the embodiment of her inherited terror? The carnival's mask of cursed joy was slipping, revealing the abyss beneath. The night deepened, and with it, Evelyn's resolve began to harden. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to break the cycle. But the carnival would not relinquish its hold without a fight. The game was set, and Evelyn was at its center. Her past and future intertwined in a dance of shadows, and the final act was about to begin. In the silence that followed Mara's revelation, Evelyn felt the sharp edge of fear mingled with determination. The nightmare was far from over, but now she knew what she must do. The ringmaster awaited, and with him, the fate of her soul. With a steadying breath, Evelyn stepped out into the night, the carnival's twisted lights beckoning her forward. The time for running was over. The moment of reckoning had arrived. And somewhere in the distance, the ringmaster's laughter curled through the mist, dark and inviting, promising a confrontation that would change everything. The night settled around the carnival like a suffocating shroud, the lingering echoes of laughter and screams weaving into a haunting lullaby of past and present. I found myself seated beneath the skeletal remains of a once grand lantern post, its flickering light casting long, trembling shadows across the cracked earth. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and rusted metal, a tangible reminder of decay and forgotten joy. My fingers traced the imaginary outlines of the ringmaster's cracked porcelain mask, the sinister smile etched permanently into its surface. It was an emblem of the legacy I carried, a legacy that twisted joy into horror and hope into despair. I thought of Grandmother Edith, her stories fragmented and bittersweet, warnings wrapped in affection and fear. She had fled this place, escaping its grasp, but the carnival had never truly released her, not from memory, not from blood. The carnival's duality gnawed at me, the promise of wonder and delight, a circus of light and laughter, masking something far darker. That mask was the curse, worn by the ringmaster and now threatening to consume me. Tummy's boots crunched softly nearby as he paced the perimeter, his silhouette outlined against the ghostly glow of the carnival's fading lights. His skepticism had been a shield and a burden for us both, but tonight, even his rugged demeanor seemed tempered by the oppressive atmosphere. A sudden gust of wind stirred the tattered banners overhead, their fabric whispering secrets in the cold air. The faintest echo of laughter drifted through the mist, morphing seamlessly into distant screams that clawed at the edges of my sanity. "It's like this place breathes pain," Tommy muttered, his voice low but steady. "It's alive with it." I nodded, unable to speak. The carnival was not just a place. It was a living nightmare woven into my bloodline. Then Mara appeared, as ethereal as ever, her pale form flickering like candlelight in the darkness. Her eyes, those haunting, flickering orbs, met mine with a mixture of sorrow and something dangerously close to hope. "The cycle is old," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breeze. "Centuries of souls trapped, of joy twisted into pain. But it can be broken. You must confront what lies beneath the mask." Her words ignited a spark deep within me, a fragile ember of defiance against the suffocating dread. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the possibility that our torment was not eternal. But the carnival's grip was strong, and the shadows around us seemed to pulse with anticipation. I stood, the chill biting through my clothes, and looked out over the carnival grounds. Mist curled around broken rides and faded tents, swallowing the remnants of laughter and light. The memories of Grandmother's warnings echoed louder now, her voice a spectral guide through the labyrinth of inherited terror. "I won't let this define me," I vowed aloud, more to myself than anyone else. "I'll end this. For her, for me, for anyone who's ever been trapped here." Tommy stepped closer, his skeptical gaze softening. "Then we fight. Together." The carnival held its breath, waiting to see if the legacy of fear would claim another victim, or if, for the first time in a century, the cycle would be broken. My heart hammered with dread and desperate resolve as I prepared to face the darkness head-on. The carnival's joy was poisoned, but I was determined to unmask the terror beneath and reclaim my fate. As the lantern's light flickered one last time before succumbing to darkness, I felt the weight of generations settle upon my shoulders. The legacy was mine now, and I would bear it with every shred of strength I possessed. The carnival's nightmare was far from over, but so was my fight. The air around us thickened, heavy with a palpable tension that seemed to warp the very fabric of reality. The moment we stepped closer to the towering clock that dominated the carnival's decayed center, the ground beneath our feet felt unstable, as if the earth itself were breathing erratic, uneven. The clock's enormous hands spun uncontrollably, sometimes hurtling backward, then jerking forward with a violent snap that echoed like a gunshot. Each tick bled into the next, a fractured rhythm that unsettled my bones. Tommy's face, usually a bastion of skeptical defiance, bore the same raw confusion I felt. He clenched his fists, jaw tight. "This isn't right," he muttered, eyes darting nervously around the shifting carnival. "It's like time's been broken here." I nodded, swallowing the lump forming in my throat. The stories my grandmother whispered in fragments the endless night, the impossible hours, suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. We were trapped, caught in a temporal snare woven by the carnival's malevolent will. The world around us began to dissolve and reassemble in jagged fragments. The carousel's chipped paint shimmered unnaturally, the horses' eyes gleaming with a sinister intelligence. As the ride spun, the mirrors surrounding it fractured, reflecting not just our current selves but ghostly images of past victims, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. The faces blurred and merged, a phantasmal dance of despair that clawed at my sanity. "Evelyn," Tommy's voice cracked, pulling me back from the edge. "We have to keep moving. This place feeds on our fear." Every step forward felt like wading through molasses, the carnival's twisted architecture bending and folding like a living nightmare. The tents stretched impossibly tall, their striped fabric rippling though no breeze stirred. Shadows lengthened and shortened erratically, as if the sun itself had lost its way. Time splintered further. I caught glimpses of myself and Tommy in overlapping loops, running, screaming, collapsing, trapped in endless cycles of terror. The cacophony of our own cries echoed around us, a maddening chorus that threatened to drown out reason. I wanted to turn away, to shut my eyes and disappear into the comforting void of oblivion, but I couldn't. Not yet. Gripping Tommy's hand, I felt a flicker of warmth, and reality pierced the suffocating gloom. "We can't let it own us," I whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "We have to fight." His skeptical gaze softened into something fierce, a reflection of my own determination. Together, we pressed on, navigating the carnival's impossible geometry, the upside-down tents, the twisted funhouse mirrors, the silent, watching crowds of phantoms. As the clock's hands spun wildly overhead, I realized the carnival's power wasn't just in the physical realm, but in this fractured time, this ceaseless loop that fed on our memories and fears. Breaking free meant confronting the core of the curse itself, the dark heart beating beneath the carnival's twisted joy. With every agonizing repetition, my resolve hardened. The carnival might stretch time into a tormenting nightmare, but I would not let it define me. The legacy of fear was mine to inherit, but also mine to challenge. The air thickened again, the ticking slowing, as if the carnival sensed the shift. I looked at Tommy, eyes blazing with a terrifying hope. The battle for our souls was far from over, but for the first time, I believed we could win. And then the world blurred, the clock struck an impossible hour, and the carnival's nightmare began anew. The air inside the Hall of Mirrors was thick, a suffocating blend of mist and stale carnival dust that clung to Evelyn's skin like a second, unwanted layer. Her footsteps echoed hollowly on cracked tiles as she stepped cautiously forward, eyes darting to the gleaming glass panels lined in uneven rows. Each mirror reflected her image, but none showed her true self. Instead, the reflections twisted and warped her features into grotesque caricatures, faces contorted in terror, eyes hollowed by despair, mouth stretched in silent screams. She stopped, breath hitching as one reflection morphed into a version of herself with skin pale and cracked like porcelain, the eyes black pits of hopelessness. The figure whispered her darkest fears, a sibilant voice that seemed to come from within her own mind. "You are nothing but a pawn in this endless game. Surrender and the pain will end." Evelyn's heart thudded violently, a surge of nausea washing over her. She wrenched her gaze away, but the hall seemed to close in, mirrors multiplying until the space felt infinite, a labyrinth of fractured selves. The Carnival's curse was no longer just a haunting presence. It was a psychological prison, a web woven from her own insecurities and inherited terror. From the shadows a slow, deliberate clap echoed, chilling her blood. Evelyn turned sharply to see the ringmaster stepping into the dim light, his tall, gaunt frame shrouded in a threadbare coat. The cracked porcelain mask covered his face, a sinister smile frozen beneath his top hat. His eyes, dark and unreadable behind the mask's cracks, seemed to bore into her soul. "Bravo, Evelyn," he intoned, voice dripping with honeyed menace. "You dance so well on the edge of despair, but why resist? Why not embrace the release I offer? No more fear, no more pain. Just eternal performance in my grand carnival." The flickering carnival lights cast eerie shadows across his figure, turning the cracks in the mask into a web of fractures, symbolic chains binding him to this cursed existence. Evelyn swallowed hard, fighting the strange pull his words exerted. The seductive nature of the curse was embodied in that smile, a promise of escape that was in truth a trap. "I'm not your puppet," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. The ringmaster tilted his head, amused. "Such fire. But every fire burns out." Determined, Evelyn raised her hand and slammed it against the nearest mirror. The glass shattered with a deafening crack, shards raining down like frozen tears. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The fragmented reflections scattered, breaking the illusions that had ensnared her mind. The ringmaster's smile faltered, the mask's cracks deepening as if wounded by her defiance. "Clever," he conceded, "but the carnival is eternal." Evelyn's breathing steadied, eyes blazing with newfound strength. In a fractured mirror across the hall, her reflection shifted once more, not a victim, but a warrior. Sharp eyes met hers, fierce and unwavering. "I will not be your legacy," she declared, stepping forward through the shards. "Not now, not ever." The ringmaster recoiled into the shadows, the mask's smile fading as the hall of mirrors began to dissolve around her. But the battle was far from over. The illusions had been broken, but the carnival's malevolence pulsed still, waiting for the next moment to strike. Evelyn's hands trembled as she wiped the sweat from her brow, heart pounding with the weight of what she had faced and what was yet to come. The seductive darkness had tested her, and she had survived. But the path ahead was darker still, and the ringmaster's mask lingered in her mind, a haunting symbol of the curse she was determined to break. As she moved toward the exit of the hall, the carnival's twisted laughter echoed faintly, a reminder that the nightmare was not finished with her yet. Yet, beneath the fear, a fierce resolve burned bright, a promise to fight, to endure, and to reclaim the joy that had been stolen by cursed delight. Evelyn stepped into the misty night beyond the mirrors, the carnival's shadows chasing her steps, but her eyes no longer reflected the terror of the past. They held the fire of a survivor, scarred, yes, but unbroken. And somewhere deep within the carnival's heart, the ringmaster watched, the cracks in his mask widening, knowing the true game was only just beginning. "You may break my illusions," he whispered to the night, "but the carnival never closes." With that, the carnival's pulse quickened, and Evelyn's fight for freedom surged forward into the darkness. The air grew colder as I descended the narrow, winding staircase hidden beneath the shattered carousel. Each step echoed faintly, swallowed quickly by the oppressive silence that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The carnival above, with its grotesque laughter and twisted lights, felt like a distant nightmare compared to the cavernous chamber. I now entered a place that pulsed with a sinister glow, the heart of the cursed carnival. The walls here were unlike anything I had seen before, translucent, shimmering faintly as if coated in a thin veil of mist, yet solid. Embedded within them were cages, ethereal prisons of light that flickered with a quiet, agonizing energy. Souls. I understood instantly. These were the remnants of those trapped by the carnival's curse, bound in eternal limbo. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I stepped further inside, the weight of countless trapped lives pressing down on me, whispering faintly in voices that echoed sorrow and despair. I could almost see their faces, twisted in silent screams, reflections of the terror I had been running from my whole life. Yet, this place was more than a prison. It was the source, the very core that sustained the carnival's malevolent power. A sudden movement caught my eye. From the shadows emerged the ringmaster, his tall, gaunt figure framed by the flickering soul cages. The cracked porcelain mask he wore gleamed faintly in the dim light, the sinister smile beneath it promising torment and cruelty. His voice, when he spoke, was smooth and haunting, a contrast to the harsh reality of his presence. "So, Evelyn," he began, his tone laced with a mocking warmth, "you've found the heart of my domain, the soul-binding chamber where eternity is forged." I swallowed hard but held my ground. "Who were you? How did you become this thing?" He laughed, a dry, hollow sound that echoed off the cavern's walls. "Once I was a man like any other, a showman with dreams and ambition. But ambition is a dangerous thing. I made a pact for eternal life, to preserve this carnival and my legacy. I did not foresee the cost. My soul is bound here, trapped as the keeper of these lost ones." His story unfolded like a dark fable, an eternal bargain twisted into a curse. Each soul he claimed added to his power but chained him further, a tragic figure condemned by his own making. Before I could respond, a soft flicker of light shifted near the edge of the chamber. Mara appeared, her pale, translucent form moving with a grace that contrasted starkly against the oppressive darkness. Her eyes flickered like candlelight, both fragile and fierce. "The curse is anchored to these bindings," she whispered, her voice a breath amidst the clamorous silence. "But it is not unbreakable. You must understand the magic that holds these souls to shatter the chains." I looked from Mara to the cages, feeling the cold pulse of the enchantment thrumming through the air. Tentatively, I reached out and touched one of the shimmering prisons. A jolt shot through me, icy and raw, as if the carnival's curse sought to claim me then and there. But instead of fear, a fierce determination flared within. This was my legacy, yes, the terror that had haunted my bloodline. But it would not claim me, not without a fight. "Tell me," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me, "how do I break this?" Mara's eyes softened, and the ringmaster's smile faltered for the first time. The carnival's heart pulsed around us, its malevolent rhythm growing louder, warning of the battle to come. But armed with the truth, I felt a spark of hope amidst the shadows. The cycle would not continue without resistance. I would face the darkness at its core, and I would fight to end the nightmare once and for all. As I prepared to delve deeper into the secrets of the carnival's soul-binding curse, the chamber seemed to close in. The weight of eternity pressing down, but also the promise that the legacy of fear might finally be broken. The carnival's heart beat on, but so did mine, fierce and unyielding. I stepped back from the pulsating cage, the cold energy still humming faintly beneath my fingertips. Mara's presence beside me was a steadying force, her flickering eyes glowing with an intensity that belied her fragile form. "The curse feeds on fear and acceptance," she said softly. "The ringmaster thrives because those bound here surrender to despair. Your defiance is the first crack in the armor." The ringmaster's gaze bore into me, the cracked mask hiding a torment that seemed almost human if twisted beyond recognition. "You cannot undo what has been forged through centuries," he hissed, stepping closer. "Every soul I have claimed strengthens this place. Every attempt to break it only tightens the chains." "Then I'll break them anyway," I said, voice shaking but resolute. "For my grandmother, for myself, for everyone trapped here." A bitter laugh escaped him, but I saw something else too, a flicker of regret, a shadow of the man he once was. The carnival's heart pulsed faster, the cages flickering wildly, as if sensing the brewing storm. Before the ringmaster could respond, Mara reached out, her translucent hand brushing my arm. "There is a way," she whispered urgently. "A ritual hidden in the carnival's past, a sacrifice that can sever the soul bonds, but it requires strength more than you know you possess." My mind raced. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, to escape the nightmare that had already cost too much. But this was my fight. The legacy I never asked for was mine to confront. "Tell me," I demanded. "Tell me everything." And as the carnival's heart beat on around us, I braced myself to face the darkness within and the battle for the souls bound to this cursed place. The chamber's eerie glow cast long shadows as Mara recounted the ritual's details, her voice waving through the heavy air like a fragile thread of hope. It required the willing surrender of a part of one's own soul, an act of defiance that could unravel the ancient magic. "It will hurt," Mara warned. "It will change you. But it is the only way." I looked at the cages again, at the faces trapped in eternal torment. Their silent pleas echoed in my heart, fueling my resolve. "Then I'll do it," I said, the weight of my decision settling like steel in my chest. "I will break this curse, no matter the cost." The ringmaster's mask cracked slightly as a shadow of anger and fear passed through his eyes. "Foolish girl," he spat. "You know not what you challenge." But I did know. The carnival's heart was vulnerable, and I was ready to strike. The battle for the souls and for my own survival was just beginning. As I turned away from the chamber, Mara's flickering form beside me, a new fire burned within. The carnival's dark core had been revealed, its secrets laid bare. I carried its weight now not just as a burden but as a weapon. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the ringmaster watched, his malevolent smile fading into a grimace of desperation. The heart of the carnival beat on, but so did my will to end it. This was the moment where fear met defiance, where legacy met choice. And I was ready to fight for a future free from the carnival's cursed joy. The nightmare was far from over. But for the first time I saw a sliver of dawn piercing the endless mist. The air within the carnival's heart pulsed with a living darkness, thick and suffocating, as if the very shadows conspired to choke the breath from my lungs. I stood frozen for a moment, the weight of what lay before me pressing down with unbearable gravity. Around me, the carnival's grotesque architecture twisted and shifted like a breathing, malevolent beast, ropes of fog snaking through the broken rides and shattered tents. I could feel it, the pulse of dread, the cursed joy that had ensnared generations before me, now reaching out to claim my soul. Beside me, Mara flickered like a fragile flame in a storm, her pale form barely more than a whisper in the darkness. Her eyes, those eerie pools of flickering candlelight, held a strange mix of sorrow and urgency as she leaned closer, her voice barely more than a breath. "This is the crossroads, Evelyn. The point where you choose surrender to the carnival's embrace, or fight for your freedom." Her words struck a chord deep within me, echoing the turmoil that had churned relentlessly since I first stepped foot into this cursed ground. I glanced at Tommy, whose rugged frame stood firm despite the tension that furrowed his brow. His skeptical gaze was laced with fierce loyalty, a tether to the reality I so desperately clung to amidst the swirling madness. "We're with you," Tommy said, his voice rough but steady, a lifeline in the suffocating darkness. I swallowed hard, feeling the flicker of hope Mara's presence kindled, fragile but real. Yet the carnival was relentless. A sudden ripple of movement caught my eye, the distorted reflections in a nearby hall of mirrors. I stepped closer, and the glass betrayed me, showing twisted versions of myself, a shattered woman overwhelmed by fear, a broken soul resigned to her fate, and a shadow that seemed to mock my very existence. From the depths of the carnival, the ringmaster's laughter echoed, a chilling melody that slithered through the air like poison. The cracked porcelain mask he wore seemed to leer from the shadows, his sinister smile promising despair. This was not just a battle for my body or soul. It was a war within, a struggle to reclaim my identity from the claws of inherited terror. Tommy's voice cut through the oppressive silence as he confronted a shadowy carnival worker who stepped forth as a barrier. "We were not afraid," he growled, his defiance sharp as a blade. The figure recoiled, shadows twisting and recoiling in an unseen force. His brash courage sparked a fire within me, reminding me that I was not alone in this nightmare. Mara's gaze locked onto mine once more, her whisper urgent and fragile. "Freedom comes at a price, Evelyn. But the cost of surrender is far worse." Her words seared into my heart, crystallizing the choice that lay before me. I squared my shoulders, feeling the raw edge of determination harden my resolve. The carnival might be a labyrinth of horrors, but I was no longer a helpless victim. With Mara's guidance and Tommy's unwavering support, I was ready to face the darkness head-on. A shiver ran down my spine as the carnival's malevolent energy surged, the shadows deepening and the twisted laughter growing louder. The crossroads had been reached, and there was no turning back. "Let's end this," I whispered, voice steady despite the storm raging inside. Tommy nodded and Mara's flickering form flared briefly, a beacon of fragile hope in the encroaching night. Together we stepped forward into the unknown, each step a defiant strike against the legacy of terror that sought to consume us. The carnival's grip tightened, the world around us warping and twisting, as if the very fabric of reality was rebelling. But beneath the crushing weight of fear, a fierce flame of hope burned small, stubborn, and unyielding. The battle for my soul, for our freedom, had begun. And I would not let the nightmare win. The fog thickened as I stepped further into the carnival's heart, the once familiar scents of popcorn and cotton candy warped into something acrid, a stench of decay and despair that clung to my skin. Shadows danced unnaturally against the twisted tents, their fabric rippling though no wind stirred. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, each exhale mingling with the eerie mist that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Then, from the depths of those shifting shadows he appeared, the ringmaster, tall, gaunt, impossibly still. His cracked porcelain mask caught what little light there was, glinting sinisterly beneath a tall, worn top hat. That smile, painted on yet somehow alive, stretched wider than any human grin, promising both delight and doom. He spoke without moving his lips. His voice slithered into my mind like smoke. "Welcome back, Evelyn. We've been waiting for you." I swallowed the lump in my throat, every instinct screaming to flee, but the weight of my bloodline anchored me in place. This was the moment it dreaded and yet prepared for, the culmination of every whispered warning, and every fragment of fear passed down from grandmother to mother to me. Around us, the carnival itself seemed to awaken. The ground beneath my feet rippled like water, the tents warped into impossible shapes, colors bleeding into one another in a nauseating kaleidoscope. The air was thick with the sounds of laughter that twisted into screams, blending memories and illusions into a living, breathing nightmare. My senses rebelled against the chaos, threatening to shatter my mind. "You cannot win," the ringmaster hissed, his voice echoing through the warped reality. "This carnival is eternal, bound by blood and fear." I clenched my fists, feeling Mara's presence flicker beside me, a pale, fragile beacon in the madness. Her candlelight eyes met mine, steady and filled with empathy. "Remember who you are," she whispered. "Your strength is more than fear." Drawing on every shred of resolve, I forced my mind to clear, focusing on the memories of grandmother's warnings, of the love and pain that tied me to this cursed place. The illusions around me faltered, the colors dulling, the laughter cracking into silence. The ringmaster's smile wavered, his mask beginning to fracture. "No," he snarled, his form flickering as the carnival's grip weakened. Suddenly, Tommy's voice broke through the chaos, steady and sure, calling my name from the edge of the surreal battlefield. His rugged face, etched with worry and determination, reminded me that I was not alone.
"You've got this, Evelyn! Fight it!"
With renewed strength, I shattered the last of the illusions, the porcelain mask splintering to reveal not a monster, but a tormented soul, bound by a dark pact in eternal regret. The carnival trembled, the twisted landscape beginning to collapse inward. Breathless, battered, and scarred, I stood amidst the ruins of the nightmare. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Yet for the first time, a fragile hope flickered within me, a chance to break the cycle, to end the legacy of terror. But as the carnival's shadows retreated, a whisper lingered in the mist. The nightmare was not finished with me. Not yet. I tightened my grip on the remnants of my courage and stepped forward, ready for whatever came next. The carnival's distorted laughter bounced off the warped mirrors surrounding me, each reflection twisting and elongating my features into grotesque caricatures of fear, doubt, and despair. The funhouse maze seemed alive, its walls breathing in rhythm with the sinister echoes of a laughter that wasn't mine. My heart pounded, every step deeper into the labyrinth, a battle against the shadows that sought to consume me. But beneath the suffocating dread, a spark of defiance burned brighter than ever before. I would not be a prisoner of these illusions any longer. I steadied my breath, eyes scanning the endless reflections, for the real me, the Evelyn Grey who had survived every nightmare the carnival had thrown her way. Each distorted face was a challenge, a taunt, a lie. I clenched my fists and spoke aloud, shattering the silence. You don't own me. The mirrors trembled, cracks spider-webbing outward as the carnival's laughter warped into a guttural growl. The maze shifted, walls stretching and contracting like the belly of some monstrous beast. Then, through the haze, the faintest flicker of movement caught my eye, Mara's pale form flickering like a candle in the wind. She appeared beside me, her translucent eyes flickering with a strange light. They feed on your fear, she whispered, voice barely more than a breath. But they can't break what you refuse to give them. Her words grounded me, reminding me that I was not alone in this battle. Mara, the liminal spirit caught between worlds, had offered me hope before, cryptic as it was. Now, with her there, I felt the weight of the carnival's curse shift slightly, as if I had pierced a veil of darkness. Emerging from the maze, the carnival's heart lay before me, a grotesque stage wrapped in shadows and mist, where the ringmaster waited. His tall, gaunt figure stood rigid against the swirling fog, the cracked porcelain mask hiding a sinister smile beneath a tall top hat. His eyes, dark and hollow, pierced through me with a malevolent hunger. So, you think you can break free? His voice was a chilling whisper that carried the weight of centuries. You belong here, Evelyn. Your blood binds you to this place. I met his gaze, feeling the venom of his words but refusing to let them anchor me. I am not your prisoner, I said firmly. This curse ends with me. The mask cracked, a jagged line splitting the porcelain like a spider web of shattered hopes. Pieces fell away, drifting like dark petals into the swirling mist that clung to the carnival's twisted illusions. For a moment, I glimpsed the tragic figure beneath a man consumed by the pact he made, bound eternally to the darkness he unleashed. But the carnival fought back fiercely. Shadows writhed like living tendrils, reaching out to ensnare me in smoke and light. Mara's flickering form moved with me, her eyes kindling with cryptic encouragement. Remember who you are, she urged. The cursed joy is a mask. Tear it away. Suddenly, a shout cut through the chaos. Tommy's rugged figure burst through the shadows, his wary gaze locked on me.
Evelyn, watch out!
His presence was a lifeline, a reminder of the world beyond the carnival's nightmare. With his help, I found strength to push back against the illusions, breaking them down one by one. The grotesque reflections shattered, the twisted memories dissolved, and the carnival's false delight crumbled into dust. Each illusion I dismantled weakened the ringmaster's grip, but also stoked his desperation. The air thickened with menace as he hissed curses that clawed at my resolve. Yet, with every step forward, I felt my own power grow, the resourcefulness and emotional strength born from a legacy of fear and the unyielding desire to end it. The carnival's pulse faltered, the malevolent energy ebbing as the shadows recoiled. I stood at the center of the fading nightmare, breath ragged but spirit unbroken. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, I glimpsed a path beyond the cursed joy and inherited terror. "This isn't the end," the ringmaster warned, voice cracking like old wood. "The carnival never truly dies." I met his gaze unflinching. "Neither do I." As the carnival's illusions shattered around me, I knew the fight to break the cycle had only just begun. But tonight I had taken back control. And in that moment, amidst the ruins of a century-old nightmare, hope kindled like a fragile flame, refusing to be snuffed out. The carnival's twisted laughter faded into silence, replaced by the steady beating of my own heart, a sound more terrifying and more powerful than any curse. The air was thick with the scent of smoke, and something far more insidious, the bitter tang of loss and defiance. Evelyn's breath came ragged, her body trembling as she leaned heavily against the jagged remains of a splintered ride. The carnival around her was a nightmare made flesh. Flickering lanterns cast grotesque shadows, the echoes of sinister laughter curling through the night like poison. Her hands bore fresh cuts, the pain sharp but secondary to the ache within her chest, a heavy, suffocating weight that threatened to crush her spirit. Tommy was by her side, his usually brash demeanor replaced by a protective urgency. His wary eyes scanned their surroundings, every distorted face of the carnival workers seeming to twist closer with a hunger that was palpable. The grotesque figures, once mere hallucinations, now moved with a predatory certainty, closing in as if sensing her faltering strength. His hand gripped hers tightly, grounding her in a reality she desperately clung to. From the shadows emerged the ringmaster, a towering silhouette, crowned with his infamous top hat. The cracked porcelain mask he wore caught the carnival's flickering light, reflecting a sinister smile that chilled Evelyn to her core. Dark tendrils of smoke curled from his fingers, writhing like living creatures as he exhaled a breath that seemed to warp the very air between them. "You think you can break free?" His voice was a cold whisper, both mocking and threatening. "This carnival is eternal. Your defiance feeds its fire, but it will consume you all the same." Evelyn straightened, despite the pain that lanced through her side. "I won't be your puppet. Not anymore." The carnival responded with a violent surge. The broken ground beneath their feet trembled as the twisted rides groaned and shifted, the tents billowing like malevolent shadows. Evelyn's vision blurred as a force slammed into her, knocking her to the ground. Her body ached with every breath, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. Tommy shouted, pulling her to her feet.
"We have to keep moving!"
Together, they darted through the maze of decaying attractions, the carnival's fury manifesting in warped illusions and spectral hands that clawed at their backs. Evelyn's heart pounded, each step a battle against the physical and psychological torment that threatened to unravel her. Despite the chaos, moments of clarity pierced through. She saw the faces of past victims etched in the peeling paint, their silent screams fueling her determination. Mara's cryptic warnings echoed in her mind, urging her not to surrender. Every scar she bore was a testament to her fight, a painful but necessary price. As the night deepened, the carnival's hold tightened, its malevolent pulse echoing in Evelyn's veins. But within her, a stubborn flame refused to be extinguished. Even as shadows clawed at her heels, she knew this was not the end. The battle had only just begun. Her gaze met Tommy's, fierce and unyielding. "We fight together." The carnival might rage, but Evelyn's defiance was a beacon, fragile yet unbreakable. And as the first light of dawn threatened the horizon, the nightmare's grip loosened, just enough for hope to flicker. But deep within the carnival's heart, the ringmaster's smile faltered only briefly before hardening into a promise. The price of defiance was steep, and the legacy of terror was far from over. The carnival would return, and so would the nightmare. But Evelyn Grey was no longer the frightened girl in the shadows. She was a force to be reckoned with, scarred, resolute, and ready to face the darkness head-on. Mara's presence had always been fleeting, a ghost hovering on the edge of Evelyn's vision, offering cryptic warnings and elusive guidance. But now, as they stood together in the heart of the carnival, the oppressive darkness pressing in around them, Mara's pale form radiated a strange, urgent light, one born of desperation and hope intertwined. "This ends tonight," Mara whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, yet carrying a weight that settled deep in Evelyn's chest. "The ringmaster's power is tethered to this place, to the souls trapped here. I can break some of those chains, but it will cost me everything." Evelyn's heart clenched. "You don't have to do this alone. We can fight him together." Mara's eyes flickered like candle flames caught in a sudden breeze. "I'm already part of this place, Evelyn. I'm bound here by my own failures. But your fight is different. Yours can end the cycle. I just need to buy you time." The carnival seemed to pulse with malevolent anticipation as the ringmaster's shadow loomed closer, his cracked porcelain mask gleaming under the faint, unnatural light. His voice slithered through the air, silky and sinister. "Ah, Mara, still playing the hero. You forget your place, lost soul." Mara stood firm, her translucent fingers weaving strange patterns in the air, drawing upon a power that shimmered with ethereal brilliance. "I remember all too well," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her form. "But this ends now." With a desperate cry, Mara unleashed a torrent of light that surged toward the ringmaster. The dark tendrils binding the carnival's soul recoiled and cracked under the assault. The twisted landscape quaked violently, the oppressive shadows retreating momentarily as if wounded. Evelyn reached out, her hand brushing Mara's glowing arm, feeling a warmth that was almost human. "Mara!" The spectral figure smiled sadly. "Go, Evelyn. Finish this. I'll hold him as long as I can." As Mara's form began to waver, dissolving like mist in the morning sun, Evelyn swallowed the lump of grief threatening to choke her. "Thank you," she whispered. Mara's eyes flickered one last time, filled with a fierce kindness. "For the first time, I am free." The carnival's pulse faltered, the darkness receding like a tide. But the battle was far from over. Evelyn stood alone now, the weight of Mara's sacrifice pressing heavily on her shoulders. Yet within that weight was a spark, a fragile, burning ember of hope. She clenched her fists, her sharp eyes blazing with renewed determination. "I will not let this end in vain." The carnival's twisted, decaying grandeur loomed around her, but the air felt different, charged with possibility, trembling on the edge of collapse. The legacy of fear was still there, a shadow over everything, but so too was the chance to break free. Evelyn stepped forward, her footsteps steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within. The fight was only beginning, but with Mara's redemption behind her, she was ready to face the darkness head-on. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the ringmaster's sinister smile faltered. The nightmare was far from over, but so was the hope. The tent was suffocating, a cavern of shadows and flickering light that felt alive with breathless anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of dust, rust, and something faintly metallic like blood, but old, dried, and forgotten. Evelyn stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum, the sound echoing in her ears louder than the carnival's distant creaks and groans. She was no longer just a visitor here. She was a participant in a dark ritual she had inherited, a legacy she was desperate to end. Before her stood the ringmaster, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, his cracked porcelain mask reflecting the dim light. His top hat sat at a crooked angle, and beneath it, the faintest hint of a sinister smile lingered on his lips. Yet tonight, that smile seemed brittle, as if the weight of centuries pressed down on the thin veneer of his malevolence. Evelyn's eyes locked onto the mask, its fractured surface marred by years of neglect and torment. The cracks spidered outward like veins, as if the mask itself was alive, struggling to contain whatever lay beneath. She took a breath, steadying herself against the tide of fear that threatened to wash her away. "It's not too late," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "You don't have to be this monster." The ringmaster tilted his head, the mask's hollow eyes boring into hers. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he reached up and began to peel the mask away. The porcelain cracked further with each inch removed, shards falling to the ground with a sharp, tinkling sound that echoed like distant bells. Beneath the mask was not the cruel demon Evelyn had imagined, but something far more tragic. The face was gaunt, the skin pale and stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes, once hidden, were hollow wells of pain, flickering with memories and regrets long buried. There was a humanity there, raw and broken, that made Evelyn's breath catch. "I was once like you," the ringmaster whispered, voice ragged and distant. "A man with dreams, with love, with hope. But the carnival, it took everything, it promised me eternity, and I took the bargain, not knowing the price." Tommy, standing nearby, clenched his fists, stepping protectively in front of Evelyn. "You're not a monster. You're a prisoner," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his eyes. "And maybe it's time someone set you free." From the shadows, Mara's pale form flickered, her candlelit eyes glowing softly. She was a ghost of the liminal space between life and death, a reminder of what it meant to be caught in the carnival's web. Her presence was a balm to Evelyn's frayed nerves, a flicker of hope in the consuming darkness. "He's been trapped too long," Mara murmured. "The curse binds us all, but understanding is the first step to breaking the chain." The carnival around them seemed to pulse, the walls breathing with the whispers of past victims. Shadows shifted, twisting into faces Evelyn recognized her grandmother's, among them silent witnesses to the unfolding revelation. The mask's fall was more than a physical act. It was a tearing away of centuries of lies and pain. Evelyn reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the ringmaster's cheek. The skin was cold, but beneath the surface, she sensed a flicker of warmth, a spark of the man he once was. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the true horror was not the external mask, but the internal prison. "Why did you do it?" she asked softly. "Why make this pact?" A bitter smile ghosted his lips. Desperation, fear of death, the desire to hold on to joy, to keep the carnival alive. But joy without freedom is a curse, and now I am bound to this place, a shadow of the man I used to be. The carnival's oppressive grip seemed to loosen slightly, the shadows retreating as if repelled by the truth. Yet the victory was bittersweet. Evelyn felt the weight of the legacy deeper than ever. This was not just a battle against a malevolent spirit, but a confrontation with the sorrow and sacrifice at the heart of the curse. Tommy's voice broke through the silence. "We have to keep fighting, for all of us, for her." Evelyn nodded, steeling herself. The ringmaster's fall was a beginning, not an end. The mask was shattered, but the carnival's hold was far from broken. As the tense lights flickered and the shadows danced once more, she knew the final act was yet to come. "We'll end this," she vowed, voice low but fierce. No more masks, no more curses. But as the carnival pulsed around them, alive and hungry, the truth lingered. Freedom would demand a price, and not all scars would ever fade. The night stretched ahead, dark and endless, as Evelyn stepped forward into the heart of the storm, where joy and terror entwined in a deadly dance. The ringmaster's fall was but a crack in the carnival's facade, and the nightmare was far from over. And somewhere, deep within the shadows, the legacy waited, patient and unyielding, ready to claim its due once more. The ground beneath my feet began to shudder with a deep, primal rumble as the carnival around us convulsed and twisted like a dying beast. The once bright tents, their paint peeling and faded, now seemed to rot and warp into grotesque shadows that clawed desperately at the thickening mist. I grabbed Tommy's arm, dragging him forward through the chaos that had become our prison.
"This way!"
I shouted over the cacophony of cracking wood and tearing canvas. Tommy's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes wide with disbelief as the carnival's attractions warped and groaned around us. The carousel's chipped horses twisted their necks unnaturally, their painted eyes bleeding streams of black ichor. The Ferris wheel, a rusting skeleton, groaned and creaked as it spun in reverse, each rotation shedding shards of glass and metal like falling stars. Behind us, the ringmaster's laughter echoed through the air, a sound so chilling it pierced straight through my bones. His voice was a twisted symphony of amusement and menace, taunting us as the carnival seemed to rise up in protest of our escape. Spectral figures emerged from the dissolving tents, carnival workers with hollow eyes and mournful expressions. Their translucent hands reached out, grasping at the air, begging for release yet threatening to drag us back. Their presence was a cruel reminder of the souls trapped here, condemned to the endless cycle of torment. "We have to keep moving," I urged Tommy, pushing past the paralysis that threatened to freeze me in place. We were almost there. Suddenly, a shimmering veil shimmered ahead, a flickering portal between collapsing realities. Mara appeared, her pale form wavering like a candle in the wind. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of hope and sorrow, a bittersweet farewell etched into every gesture. "This is your way out," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "But remember, the curse follows those who flee unbroken." I took her offered hand without hesitation, feeling the cold pulse of her ethereal presence guide me through the veil. The world twisted and blurred, colors bleeding into one another, sounds distorting into distorted echoes. When we emerged, the carnival's silhouette was a ghostly memory, dissolving into the thick mist that clung to the earth like a shroud. Outside the carnival's boundary, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath as the oppressive weight of the place lifted at least physically. Tommy crouched beside me, wiping sweat from his brow, his skeptical gaze softened by relief. But the silence that surrounded us was not peaceful. It was heavy with unresolved terror, a quiet that screamed of unfinished business. The carnival was gone, but the legacy it had chained to my soul remained, an invisible leash pulling at the edges of my consciousness. I looked at Tommy, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not over." He nodded, understanding the burden I now carried, a burden passed down through generations, a legacy of fear and cursed joy interwoven into the very fabric of my being. We had escaped the carnival's physical abyss, but its shadow stretched far beyond the mist, and I knew with chilling certainty that the nightmare was far from finished. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with pale hues, I rose unsteadily to my feet, determined to face whatever darkness awaited. The carnival that never closed had faded, but its legacy was etched into me forever. And somewhere, deep within the swirling mists of my mind, the echo of the ringmaster's laughter lingered, promising that the cycle might one day begin anew. The city's morning light filtered weakly through the threadbare curtains of my apartment, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. I stood at the window, my fingers tracing the cold glass as I stared out at the bustling streets below. A world that continued obliviously despite the nightmare I'd barely escaped. The distant hum of traffic and the occasional sharp cry of a street vendor felt like a cruel reminder of normalcy, something I once took for granted but now seemed utterly alien. I blinked, trying to shake the heaviness that settled in my chest. Relief and dread warred within me, a suffocating blend that made every breath feel like dragging stones uphill. The carnival had faded into mist behind me, but its presence clung like a shadow I couldn't outrun. The grotesque laughter, the flickering lights, the ringmaster's cracked porcelain mask, they haunted every corner of my mind, slipping into the quiet moments when I thought myself safe. A sudden knock at the door jolted me. I hesitated, heart thumping erratically, before opening it to find Tommy standing there, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. His rugged frame filled the doorway, his wary gaze softening as he caught sight of me. Though his usual brash demeanor was tempered by exhaustion, there was an unspoken bond between us forged in the fires of shared terror. "Thought you might need this," he said quietly, stepping inside. The apartment was cramped and cluttered, a reflection of my frayed state. He set the cups down on the table, his eyes never leaving mine as he searched for the right words. "How are you holding up?" he asked, voice rough but gentle. I swallowed hard, the weight of the question pressing down on me. I don't know, I admitted. I'm here, but it's like the carnival never really left. Tommy nodded, understanding etched deeply on his face. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft clink of ceramic mugs. Then, a sudden creak from the floorboards made me flinch violently, my eyes darting toward the shadowed corner of the room. Tommy's hand shot out, steadying me. It's just the building settling, he reassured, though I could tell he was as unsettled as I was. Later that evening, unable to quell the restless turmoil within, I pulled out my grandmother's old journal, a fragile relic filled with fading ink and cryptic entries. The pages whispered secrets of past horrors, each word a chilling echo of the legacy I now bore. As I traced the lines, shadows danced unnaturally around the dim room, as if the very air vibrated with unseen menace. I shivered, clutching the book to my chest. The more I learned, the heavier the curse seemed to weigh, a noose tightening with every revelation. I felt as though I was sinking into a quicksand of despair and dread, struggling to find solid ground. At one point, drawn to the mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, I caught my reflection, or rather, a flicker of something else. For a heartbeat, my face shifted into the ringmaster's cracked porcelain mask, his sinister smile frozen in time. The image vanished as quickly as it came, but the chill it left behind was visceral. I staggered back, heart pounding in my ears. The carnival's grip was not just a memory or a nightmare. It was a living, breathing presence within me. I was not free. Tommy's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "Together. You're not alone in this." His words were a balm, but the question gnawed at me relentlessly. Could I truly escape the legacy that had claimed my grandmother and threatened to consume me? Or was I doomed to be another soul trapped in the carnival's eternal night? The shadows lengthened as the city lights flickered to life outside, and I knew that whatever awaited, the nightmare was far from over. My fight was just beginning, and somewhere, deep in the recesses of my mind, the carnival whispered, promising that the joy would return, and with it, the terror that never truly fades. I closed my eyes, steeling myself against the darkness. The carnival might have faded for now, but its legacy was woven into my very being. And I would have to face it again and again until the cycle was broken, if that was even possible. The night stretched on, the silence broken only by the distant echo of a carnival tune, haunting and bittersweet. A reminder that some places, some curses, never truly close. The burden of legacy the fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows that danced across the cabin walls. Evelyn sat curled on the floor, the weight of the worn photograph pressing coldly against her palm. It was Edith's face staring back at her grandmother's eyes, sharp and haunted, staring out from decades past. The silence around her was thick, save for the occasional pop from the embers. She traced the contours of Edith's face with trembling fingers, as if trying to draw strength from the ghostly image. For years, Evelyn had been running from the stories, from the carnival, from the relentless shadow cast by her family's history. But now, sitting here in the quiet aftermath of the nightmare, she understood something new. The carnival's curse wasn't just a place she could leave behind. It was a legacy woven into her blood, a burden carried in her very soul. Her mind wandered back to the last days inside the carnival, the illusions that had threatened to consume her, the ringmaster's cruel smile etching itself into her memory. But those horrors were only part of the story. The true terror lay in the unbroken cycle, the inescapable inheritance of fear and suffering that had claimed her grandmother, and now threatened to claim her. A sudden knock at the door broke her reverie. Tommy stepped inside, his rugged frame outlined against the pale moonlight filtering through the window. His eyes were tired but steady, the familiar defensive posture she had known since childhood now tempered by something softer understanding. "You okay?" he asked quietly, as though afraid the walls might hear. Evelyn nodded, though the knot in her chest tightened. I'm trying to be. Tommy sat beside her, his presence a grounding force amid the swirling storm inside her. You've been carrying this alone for too long, he said. But you don't have to. She allowed herself a small, grateful smile. It's not just about what happened, it's about what's still coming, the curse. It's not something you run from, it's something you live with. He frowned, searching her face. How do you mean? She swallowed hard, voice low and steady. It's the burden of legacy. The carnival may fade, but the fear, the pain, the memories, they don't just vanish. They live on inside us, shaping who we are, threatening to pull us back, to break free. I have to face that every day. Not just the carnival, but myself. Tommy's gaze softened. Then we face it together. Later that evening, as the mist crept closer around the cabin, Mara appeared in a shimmer of candlelight. Her translucent form flickered, eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. The curse is not a chain, Mara whispered, voice echoing like a distant bell. It is a legacy of shadows. To break it, you must walk through the darkness within and beyond. Evelyn met her gaze, the ethereal presence both unsettling and comforting. Why me? Why my family? Mara's smile was sad, because you carry the light to challenge the darkness. But be warned, the struggle never truly ends. As Mara faded, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose mingled with the cold reality of her task. The carnival was gone, but its echoes remained, woven into the fabric of her being. The next morning, Evelyn and Tommy ventured to the edges of the carnival's remnants. The swirling mist cloaked the decaying tents and broken rides in a ghostly veil. A cold wind tugged at Evelyn's coat, whispering promises and threats all at once. She stood silent, eyes fixed on the horizon where joy and terror had danced their endless waltz. The carnival that never closed had left its mark not just on the land but on her soul. "We're not done," she murmured, "and maybe we never will be. But I'm ready." Tommy nodded, the faintest smile breaking through his weariness. "Then let's make sure this legacy ends with us." Together, they turned away from the mist, stepping into an uncertain dawn, carrying the weight of the past and the fragile hope of a different future. The burden of legacy was heavy, but so was the strength to bear it. The weight of silence pressed in on me, like the heavy fog that once shrouded the carnival grounds. Back in my apartment, far from the twisted tents and warped rides, I should have felt relief, a reprieve from the nightmare that had consumed my life. Yet the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to thicken, pulsing with a life of their own. I sat motionless, heart pounding, as a faint whisper brushed past my ear, a breath of sound so soft I questioned if it was real or merely the echo of my frayed mind. I told myself it was over. The carnival had dissolved into mist, the ringmaster defeated, or so I hoped with every fiber of my being. But that night the air grew cold, and the candle on my windowsill flickered erratically, as if responding to an unseen force. The dance of flame reminded me of Mara's flickering eyes, those pale, translucent orbs that had guided me through the carnival's illusions. I reached out instinctively, trying to hold onto the fading warmth, but the cold seeped deeper, settling in my bones like a creeping frost. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. The voices that once haunted the carnival's night laughter twisted into screams. Music warped into dissonance, now whispered just beyond hearing, teasing at the edges of my sanity. And then, the unmistakable call, the distant echo of a carnival barker's voice, low and sinister, threading through the wind outside my window. I jolted upright, heart hammering, and glanced toward the darkened street. Nothing but the empty night stared back. Tommy's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, sharp and urgent. "Evelyn, are you okay? You've been distant lately. That place, it's not done with you, is it?" His skepticism was a shield, but I saw the worry shadowing his eyes. He wanted to believe I was safe, but the carnival's grasp was deeper than either of us had realized. I forced a smile, though it felt brittle and forced. "I'm fine, just adjusting." But I wasn't fine. I felt it, a dark tendril curling inside me, a silent shadow that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it gnawed at the edges of my mind. The curse wasn't gone. It had simply slipped beneath the surface, weaving itself into the fabric of my being. One night, I stood before the cracked mirror that hung crookedly on my wall. The glass was marred with fine fractures, distorting my reflection into something unrecognizable. As I stared, my image wavered, shifting and twisting until a dark shadow curled at the edge of my vision, like a serpent waiting to strike. My breath caught. The Carnival's legacy was not a chain I could shed so easily. It was a part of me, now an unseen bond that tightened with every passing day. I reached out to touch the mirror, fingers trembling as the cold glass met my skin. The reflection flickered, and for a moment I saw Mara's flickering eyes staring back. A whisper echoed in my mind, "The curse sleeps, but it never dies." Fear clawed at my throat, but beneath it a stubborn ember of resolve sparked to life. I would not let this darkness consume me. If the Carnival's curse lingered within, I would fight it, not just to save myself, but to end the legacy of terror once and for all. But as the nights grew longer and the shadows deeper, I realized the true battle was only beginning. The unseen chains that bound me were tightening, and the Carnival's return was not a question of if, but when. I was trapped in a legacy I never chose, haunted by a joy turned to terror, and the curse whispered my name in the dark. The Carnival had never truly closed, and neither could I. The shadows stirred again, and with them, the nightmare waited to reclaim me. Outside, the wind carried a faint melody, a twisted lullaby that promised both delight and doom. I clenched my fists, the fight raging inside me as the unseen chains threatened to pull me back into the abyss. But I would hold on. I had to. Because some curses could be broken, even if their scars never fully faded. And the Carnival's final act was yet to come. The morning light seeped through the thin curtains of my apartment, casting long, wavering shadows that stretched like fingers across the worn wooden floor. Outside, the city was waking, but here, in this small sanctuary I'd carved from the remnants of my life, the past clung to me like a second skin. I stood by the window, hands resting on the cool glass, trying to anchor myself in this moment, this fragile new dawn. Yet beneath the gentle hum of morning, a distant, haunting melody seemed to weave through the air, faint carnival music, like a ghost's lullaby teasing the edges of my sanity. It was a cruel trick of the mind, I told myself, the echo of a nightmare refusing to fade. But the sound stirred memories, a twisted dance of joy and terror that had marked my days and nights since the Carnival's mist swallowed me whole. The Carnival was gone, or so I thought, but its presence lingered, a shadow cast long and dark across my soul. I turned away from the window, the room suddenly feeling too small, too confining. The walls seemed to breathe with silent whispers, and the air was heavy with the scent of rusted metal and faded popcorn, an olfactory ghost that mocked my escape. I swallowed hard, willing the memories to retreat, but they pressed closer, relentless and insistent. A knock at the door shattered the fragile stillness, sharp and unexpected. My heart leapt, fingers trembling as I crossed the room. Opening it, I found Tommy standing there, his rugged frame silhouetted against the morning light, eyes dark with concern and something unspoken. "Evelyn," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." Inside, the air between us was taut, filled with the weight of unspoken fears. Tommy's gaze searched mine, wary yet unwavering. "You're changing," he said eventually, the words rough but honest. "I don't know what's happening to you, but it's not just the Carnival anymore." I wanted to deny it, to shield him from the shadows still clawing at my mind, but the truth was undeniable. The Carnival hadn't released me. It had merely shifted its grip, subtle and insidious. I felt it in the way my thoughts twisted, in the fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures that vanished when I looked too long, in the cold shiver that ran down my spine at the slightest provocation. "I'm trying," I whispered, voice breaking, "trying to live without it, but it's like a scar beneath my skin, always there, aching." Tommy reached out, his hand steady and sure, grounding me. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. That night, sleep was a fragile, elusive thing. My dreams were restless, haunted by the flickering eyes of Mara, her translucent form wavering like candlelight caught in a draught. She spoke in riddles, her voice a whisper carried on the wind, warning me that the curse was not broken, that the carnival's hunger remained. I woke gasping, heart pounding, the cold sweat clinging to my skin. The room was dark, but the shadows seemed to pulse with life, shifting and breathing in rhythm with my ragged breaths. The line between what was real and what was nightmare blurred, and I felt the weight of the carnival's legacy settle over me once more. Days passed in a haze of vigilant quiet. I tried to reclaim fragments of normalcy, work, friends, the hum of everyday life, but the carnival's shadow followed. In the crowded streets, in the laughter of children playing, I saw the mask of the ringmaster, cracked porcelain and cruel grin flashing like a spectre at the edge of my vision. Once I caught a glimpse of that figure in a bustling park, a phantom among strangers, disappearing before I could reach out. The fear was suffocating, yet beneath it, a stubborn ember of resolve burned. I would not let the carnival define me, not again. But as the sun set on this new dawn, the horizon remained dark, a reminder that some legacies are not so easily shed. The carnival had never truly closed, for it lived in the spaces between joy and terror, in the stories whispered by those who dared to remember. And I was one of them. The question that lingered, heavy and unanswered, was whether I could break free from the cycle, or if I was destined to walk the blurred line forever, caught between cursed joy and inherited fear. The carnival's call was quiet now, but I knew it would return, inevitable as the turning of the century, as certain as the shadows that danced just beyond the light. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertain future. Whatever awaited, I would face it not as a victim, but as a survivor. The nightmare had etched itself into my bones, but so, too, had the strength to fight back. And this time I would not run. The carnival's song was fading, but somewhere, just beyond sight, its heart still beat, waiting for the next dawn. The tendrils of mist curled around my ankles like the fingers of some unseen creature, cold and relentless. The carnival, the grotesque, twisted carnival that had haunted my bloodline for generations, was dissolving before me, its tents sagging and fading. The laughter and screams that had filled the air now nothing but a distant echo swallowed by the fog. I stood at the edge of the place that had once promised joy, but delivered only terror, watching as it vanished into the nothingness from which it had emerged. The air was thick with the scent of decay and burnt sugar, a cruel reminder of the carnival's poisonous allure. As the last light flickered out from the carousel, its chipped horses frozen mid-gallop, a shiver ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the knowledge that this was not an end, merely a pause. The carnival never truly closed. It merely waited, patient and hungry. Tommy's voice, rough and breathless, broke the silence. It's gone. It's really gone this time. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to let the relief wash over me, to forget the nightmare and reclaim my life. But the shadows clung to my skin like a second skin, memories of twisted faces and flickering candlelight burning behind my eyes. Mara's translucent form had faded, her candlelight eyes dimming but never extinguishing. Her warnings echoed in my mind. The curse was not bound to the carnival grounds alone. A sudden breeze stirred the mist, and in its swirl, I thought I saw the cracked porcelain mask, the ringmaster's mask, hovering just beyond reach. His sinister smile twisted into something almost sorrowful, a silent admonition. The mask vanished as quickly as it appeared, but the unease it left behind settled deep within me. Back in my apartment, the world felt smaller, the shadows longer. I sat surrounded by the remnants of a cursed legacy, faded posters, yellowed photographs, and the tattered journal of my grandmother, Edith Gray. Her warnings, once cryptic and fragmented, now made brutal sense. The carnival was a parasite feeding on fear and joy alike, passing from one generation to the next. I traced a finger over the inked names on the posters, my own name standing out in faded red letters. The invitation was never just for me, it was for all of us, bound by blood and terror. The Carnival's melody played faintly in my ears, a haunting tune that refused to be silenced. The scent of popcorn and burnt sugar lingered, inexplicably filling the room, as if the Carnival's dark joy had seeped into the very walls. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to flee, to run from the legacy that had claimed my grandmother and now sought me. But this was my story now. The Carnival's return was inevitable, its hunger unending, and though I had escaped its physical clutches, the curse was woven into my very soul. The nightmare was never truly over. Outside, the night deepened, and the mist thickened once more. Somewhere faint and distant, the sound of carnival music began anew, soft, seductive, and terrifyingly alive. I opened my eyes, heart pounding, and whispered into the darkness, "This time, I'll be ready." The carnival had never closed, and neither would I.